So Zionism. Zionism and Christianity. Christian Zionism is an oxymoron. You want to try on with me about prophecy? There's no prophecy in the Bible that says the state of Israel should start in 1948 or that it should start at all. None whatsoever. You're reading into it. What we do know is this. Jesus fulfilled the prophecy of Daniel 9. In Daniel 9, our Lord Jesus Christ was to be crucified, and after that, the town would be destroyed. What town? Jerusalem. Why? Just because a bunch of Romans decided, just because the Jewish war just happened to break out in AD 66. And the temple was destroyed in AD 70. Just happened. And the Romans just happened to come along. And huge numbers of Jews happened to be scattered. Just happened. One of those historical events. No. The prophecy of the destruction of the temple means that this has cosmic significance. Do you doubt that God punished them for the killing of his Christ, his Son? Do you doubt that? What kind of interpreter of prophecy are you if you think that it was just an accident of timing, that the town was destroyed, that the nation was scattered just a few decades after the crucifixion of Christ, not to have returned for almost 2,000 years, just like lead up to 1948. They'd never been away from the land that long since the land was conquered by Joshua. And you say, well, they're back now. By whose permission? If God threw them out, instrumentalising the Romans so to do, then when has God said they can come back? When has God said they can have the land? What has changed? Have they repented of the crucifixion of Christ? Have they asked for forgiveness from God? Or have they doubled down? When Christ was crucified and the temple was destroyed, the Talmud did not yet exist. The things that are said about Christ and the Holy Mother, Mary, are not worth repeating. Do you not see the pictures of them spitting on churches? Spitting at priests? Oh, you don't care about priests. But spitting generally, hating Christianity. On YouTube now? Do you not know what's supposed to happen to us when they are ruling the world with their Messiah? He's just the Dajjal that the Muslims speak about. The Dajjal is really the Jesus whom they expect to come back and will actually destroy Christianity. They're basically two ends of the same knotty piece of wood. There's going to be somebody who's going to come, who's going to present himself as being all things to all Jews and all Muslims. And he's not going to be the Christ, and he's not going to be our friend. Tikkun Olam is what you need to look up. What the world is to be like in the rabbinic religion. It's not the Hebrew religion. It's not the Hebrew religion. Understand this. The Hebrew religion has a temple and sacrifices. If they had a temple and sacrifices, we could say, okay, it's the Hebrew religion. Shorn of the Talmudic stuff. Moses never knew the Talmud. The Jews talk about the oral law. Oral law given on Sinai alongside the actual written law in the Old Testament, in the Torah, in the Pentateuch. Oh boy, you born-again Christians who, quite rightly, like me, despise these alleged historically valuable hadith, which say that sayings of a character 200 years ago can be passed on faithfully without error and then written down 200 years later, and that's authentic. You don't know the half of it. This whole idea comes from the rabbinic system. Read Tom Holland's book, In the Shadow of the Sword, I think it's called. He does refer to this briefly. The schools in Persia, the rabbinic schools in Persia are, he didn't draw this conclusion, I did. the connection between that and the way hadith are done. Muslims steal everything, even bad ideas. Okay, so you've got that over 200 years plus, and that's bad. But these rabbinic characters, they say that the oral law was given on Sinai, which is about 1500 BC. And it found its way into written form, well, we would say at the earliest, 1500 years later. They say this with a straight face. It's rubbish. And it subverts the Torah, as Jesus said to the Pharisees at the time, even when this was in its infancy, this whole business of creating stuff to explain the law and subvert it. It's just subversion. And they've not stopped. So you want to say these are the chosen people? Well, Moses wouldn't have recognised them. He'd call them heretics. But you've got to also look at the studies that have been done about ethnicity. Look at the studies where I've got a book called Abraham's Children. There's a lot of DNA work done on present day Jewish people to see their connection with the Jews of the Middle East. And there's different views about whether actually there is a genetic connection between the Jews of today and those of the Middle East. Remember, I've said, I think I may have wound that particular woman with the cat logo up when I said Netanyahu's not his real name, it's Milikovsky, Ben Gurion, Israel Shamir, Begin, who I was speaking about. They're all from Poland. But that doesn't mean, of course, that they're not ethnically the same as the characters of the Old Testament. Not in principle, it doesn't say that, but it should raise your suspicions a little bit. Well, what seems to be the case is, when one considers the DNA question, and because there are people who I think Shlomo Sand, you can tell from that name he's a Jew, who said there's no genetic connection between those who call themselves Jews today and the Jews of the Old Testament. I don't take that position. I can accept there's a genetic connection in this respect. That there seem to be genetic markers in those who call themselves Jews today, which correspond with Middle Eastern genetic markers. And then in this book, Abraham's Children, I think that he was seeing that as a kind of a sign that yes, these are descendants. After 2,000 years, we can know now these people of today are descendants of those ancient Hebrews. But actually, you can't say that. The genetic markers are also present amongst other Middle Eastern populations. We don't know that these people who call themselves Jews today are actually of the Hebrew population or some other Middle Eastern population or some combination of populations. In any event, there is a massive dilution ethnically. When God willed the destruction of the nation because his Christ was killed, many of these folks went to Italy. They intermarried with Italian women. Many went north, intermarried with Germanic women. Obviously, because so many are in the east, many went east and settled in what was called the Pale of the Settlement. If there is any Hebrew blood in them, any Hebrew genes, they're massively diluted by the presence of European genes and possibly other Middle Eastern genes. So what are we going to say? Are we going to say that there's a right to possess a piece of land somewhere on earth? I mean, we Brits, we're so crafty, we're so cheeky. There was a proposal that they have Uganda. Any of you out there Ugandan? You've got to learn about this. As I said, I'm a patriot. I'm not going to apologise for the empire in principle, but by Jove, we've done some things. But there is this, I'll say, as well, that They are going to say, as Zechariah 12:10 says, they'll look upon him whom they've pierced and they'll say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So there are actual Jews on earth. They will turn to him. That doesn't mean we just say they're all ethnically, fully Hebrew. They may be a mixture. Or they may not be at all, but they take the name Jew, and that kind of, in a way, makes them Jewish. Because when Jesus comes, he's dealing not so much racially with people. When he comes in the second coming, he's going to be saying, all you who disagree with me, you who rely on a misunderstanding of the Old Testament, you who have these accretions called the Talmud and other writings, you have to get it out of your head that you were right in having me killed. And that statement at the heart of all those people who espouse Rabbinic Judaism, that is the prophecy being fulfilled when Jesus touches their hearts in that way, whatever their actual racial makeup is.